This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. Here's your host, Corey Tusick.
This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. On today's episode, I talked with Johnny Quinn. Johnny is a former football player, played at the University of North Texas, and then got on a couple NFL teams. And then after his football career ended in the CFL up in Canada, he made the transition to bobsledding. So he was a Olympian in 2014, represented Team USA for the four-man bobsled. But he started following me and noticed he was a Bitcoiner, and, so wanted to see his journey, because he does a lot of, corporate speaking events and motivational speaking, stuff like that. And I thought it was an interesting perspective, because a lot of his discussions talk about pivoting in careers, because he pivoted from football after an ACL injury, and found a new career with bobsledding. And, with Bitcoin, obviously, we're all pivoting out of the Fiat system and into Bitcoin. So it was interesting to find out that I didn't know how long he'd been in this space. So he is 2021, pretty new, and he's all in as far as, dollar cost averaging and long Bitcoin. He gets it. So it's really cool to see. And I think like him and like people like myself have had a quick learning curve thanks to everything that's out there. So to learn from. So hope you enjoy this conversation. We did talk a little bit about bobsledding too, because I had to ask, considering Cool Runnings was a childhood favorite movie of mine. If you want to follow Johnny on Twitter, it's at Johnny Quinn USA, and in the show notes I'll put the links to all of his other stuff. But if you want to follow me, the show is at Bitcoin Simply. My personal Twitter account is at Tusick Corey, and if you want to email the show, it's bitcoinmadesimplepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. I forget, were we in? We might have been in Twitter Spaces together or something.
Yeah, I came across, I came across your information, or your Twitter handle. Obviously, you're pretty active, and just loved the content, and so I think we connected through that.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, how does being an Olympian and being a Bitcoiner now, how did that intersect? I guess, to give people your background, start with your, I guess, football, and the bigger question is, how do you go from football to bobsled?
You just watch Cool Runnings over and over and over again, and that's how you now. You're right. I've got a football background. I grew up in Texas, played Division I football at the University of North Texas. Then I entered the NFL. I was with the Buffalo Bills, the Green Bay Packers. Got cut both years, then went on to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, played in the CFL for a year. Corey, blew out my knee. That was the end of my my football career, and some interesting things started to line up. My mom had a coworker who was a bobsledder back in the day. And my agent represented a bobsledder back in the day. And since there's no NCAA level bobsledding, they recruit from football and track and field. And so I ran track in college as well. And so, 3 cuts in pro ball, I kind of looked like damaged goods on paper. So I saw that door closing, and I remember my agent, do you want to try bobsled? And I'm thinking, to that point, I grew up in Texas. All I know is Cool Runnings, right? The Jamaican team. Yeah. And he goes, Johnny,
some people say they can't believe.
There you go. Yeah. Feel the rhythm, feel the run. Get on up. It's bobsled time. And he goes, you want to try bobsled? They look for former football guys, track background. And so I started in 2010 and then made my first Olympic team in 2014. So I had a chance to represent the United States in the 2014 Winter Olympics. And Corey, it was unreal. I mean, to walk in opening ceremonies.
Yeah, I was going to ask, that has to be incredible.
Oh, it was just amazing to compete on Olympic ice. I mean, it was a remarkable, just a special time in my career. And so since then, I speak full time. I travel the country. I do a lot of keynotes. I do a lot of, corporate events, whether you bring in outside speakers. So I come in and speak on basically how do you pivot when things get tough, right? And so
Yeah.
What was interesting is one of my teammates from the Olympics got into Bitcoin, and shortly after the games in 2014.
Who was that?
And his name's Dallas Robinson. We were on the same bobsled team. And, looking back now, sadly, I paid no attention, right? I think.
The price was probably
a
couple $100.
Couple $100, yeah. And what's interesting is the more I start to learn in this space is people have different entry points. And, I think back to then, or when I started hearing about Bitcoin, I have a gaming background. I played a lot of Halo, went to the National Halo tournament.
Oh, nice.
And with a Team Slayer team. And I just thought Bitcoin was, for gamers to purchase online cloaks. And boy, was I wrong. I paid no attention to it. And so we, you stay connected with your.
I did the same thing, man.
Did you? Yeah. It's like, now it's like, now what I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, what an idiot. But I started. I remember my teammate got into Bitcoin 2014, 2015. Didn't pay much attention to it, but during the year of COVID last year, like everybody, I saw the price start to run, and so that perked my attention. I'm like, okay, there's so much information out there, a lot of FUD floating around. Let me talk to one of my teammates, a guy I trust who's been in the Bitcoin space for 4 or 5 years now. And so he pointed me in the direction of some resources. And so, I read what I think every Bitcoiner or newbie or whoever needs to read is the Bitcoin Standard. And when you read that 300-page book, and you start to understand, what is money? Money can be anything, but it has to have these certain properties to transfer in time and space. Did I start to get it? And when I say get it, still on a topical level.
Oh yeah.
But I started to think, okay, we've got something here that is just remarkable. And so that was kind of my journey. And so I think what's so interesting is, I started purchasing Bitcoin in 2021. So I don't have a Bitcoin bag from back in the day.
Yeah.
And so when I go out and introduce people to Bitcoin, or now I'm speaking on it. I held my first Bitcoin meetup last month here in Texas. I'm going to host one this month. I think I can come from a perspective, Corey, of, as much as I wish I would have had a bag from 2014, I don't.
Yeah.
I started accumulating in 2021. So I think I can bring a unique perspective, if you will, for someone who's gotten into the space. And what's so interesting, Corey, is the more I study and read and consume content, the more excited I get about it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The more...
if you're ever feeling down about it, all you have to do is go on and flip on a podcast or something. Yeah. And then afterwards you're like, all right, whatever money I have in my bank account, I'm just going to dump it into Bitcoin.
Yeah. Get it out. Yeah. Get it out of that dirty.
Sell the shirt off your back,
Right.
And,
right.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's kind of my intro. That's my intro to the space.
Yeah. So then you're in the unique, because I'm, as far as purchasing, class of 2020.
Okay. Cool.
But I was fortunate when I first bought it was March of 2020. So
beautiful. Yeah.
So I enjoyed, quite the meteoric rise. Right now I'm trying my hardest to earn like a bear market badge, although it's not a bear market. We're still in a bull run. But I'm just buying everything, and it's just, I'm trying to get to negative. I think I'm close to negative. I don't keep that close of track of yeah, I think you have an interesting perspective, because you guys, if you get super excited about it in 2021, and here we are, and it's July now, and we're sitting in this kind of lull, and you're still excited about it. So how
I had a 50% retracement from, because I buy every week. So I bought, that the week it was 64. So, we're at a 45-50% retracement. And when you zoom out, I think that's so important, especially talking to the Bitcoiners that have been in this space. But that's just a good life lesson in general. When I zoom out from my career in professional football, when I zoom out from my career, it was a 4-year journey to make the Olympic team, Corey. Men and women who operate from a perspective of wisdom, they zoom out. Now, I don't like that I bought the week of 64, but again, I'm extremely Bitcoin long. So, and I'm DCAing it, once a week. So I'm going to buy high and I'm going to buy low. But the most important thing with this finite asset is that I'm accumulating. That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Accumulate.
Just keep accumulating and kind of like put your nose down.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever like I did this with hockey, like running up ski slopes for training.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever ran. I'm sure you ran up a ski
hills
slope or two.
and oh yeah.
And I kind of look at Bitcoin accumulation kind of like running up the ski slope, where like where our coach, and like when we be doing the training, he'd be like, don't look up at the top of the ski slope.
Yeah.
Look 2 feet in front of you and get to that next spot. And you just keep getting to that next spot. And then next thing you know, boom, you're at the top of the mountain.
Right. Right.
And so I kind of look at like the DCA like that, like, and I'm sure for training, like, with Olympic training and, college football and track and field and all that kind of stuff, you see like a similar process because, when you start training, it's not an overnight process. It's
right.
And then you have to sustain it.
You have to sustain. Yeah. Yeah. What I learned at the elite level in athletics, and you learn this growing up in sports, or if you're part of any type of extracurricular activity, is consistency, right? Consistency is key. You got to show up, and when I remember getting to college and I'm a freshman wide receiver, we were lifting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. Show up. Same thing in the Bitcoin space, right? If you will, is accumulate. Now, there's comfort levels for everyone. There's, how do you do it? I guess you could argue that and have some strategies, but similar to sports, get in the weight room, have a consistent game plan. So let's have a consistent game plan for how are you going to accumulate Bitcoin? And, if you're a sailor, you're an all-in guy. If you're, it's interesting. As the more I look in this space, wherever people fall, as they're, whether they're coming from a skepticism perspective or, they've been in the fiat system for so long. I think we got to get off zero. Everybody has to get off zero.
Yeah.
How you want to do that, I don't know. It's a personal preference. That's the beauty of individual sovereignty. You got to make your choice. But I just, zero's not the right answer, Corey. It's not the right answer. And, I have a passion as a keynote speaker. Companies hire me to come in and speak on teamwork, execution, performance, right? How to action steps that you use in high stressful situations. And so what I've noticed in this Bitcoin space is that, look, Bitcoin's inevitable. It doesn't need me, doesn't need you, doesn't need Sailor, doesn't need it doesn't need anybody. It's going to happen. But what I've found is that, okay, I've got gifts, and we all have been given gifts. My ability to communicate is I not coming from a finance background or not coming from a computer science background. Is there a way I can sit down with somebody and help them understand, and this is what I call my Bitcoin meetup, the basics of Bitcoin, right? Understanding that, seashells were money, cattle were money, salt was money back in the day. Yeah. Anything can be money. And so can I break this down in almost a layman's term where somebody doesn't have a computer science or finance background, that they can understand this breakthrough in peer-to-peer transactions, that they get it. Now, what they do with the information, I don't know. It's up to them. But golly, I sure wish somebody would have sat down with me and didn't use complex terms, but to help me understand it. And so that's kind of my passion, really, with being in this space is using my gifts as a keynote speaker to help educate, I guess you could say, the masses. Who aren't interested or who get a little intimidated when people use the word finance. Or, who aren't
when they hear like blockchain or SHA-256.
Right. It's like, and they just shut down when, most of their net worth is in fiat and it's getting debased every year from quantitative easing and inflation. We've got a big problem. So it gets me excited to say, hey, there's a solution out there that actually you can control. But, in that line of work, Corey, we've got to communicate it in a way that people understand.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. That's the hardest part is, and I'm sure, well, it's amazing. It sounds like you, have like really become like a Bitcoin maximalist, like, and I say that in a good way, because that's what I am. And like, you kind of like have gone basically like you get it, and the way I kind of look at it is like, I think a lot of people try to think, okay, I have to understand the code. I have to understand everything. And it's like, if you get the basics, the surface level, that it can't be manipulated.
Right.
And it's a hard cap, and the value in that, you're like, oh, and it's censorship proof. You're like, okay, that's really all you need to know. Kind of like, if you look at bullet points, what do you think?
Yeah. The two things that attracted me was the finite supply, 21 million. We've never had that before.
Yeah.
And then the decentralization, for somebody not to get in there and muddy the waters. When Facebook gets in trouble, what do? They call Zuckerberg to Congress, to DC. It's so mind blowing, and I think the Bitcoin Standard talked about this. Look, I'm an avid reader, and so I've gone down the path where, I'm consuming as much content as I can. And what I've found about this, Corey, is that it makes me it opens up my perspective in that, wow, I still have a lot of room to grow here. I still have a lot to learn, and you could really go down the technical side of it. But I started looking at consistencies, and one of the things that I've compared, and I speak on this, and I think I got it from the Bitcoin Standard, or it was another book I read, maybe it was an article, but comparing it to the breakthrough of similar to going from horses to automobiles, right? When Carl Benz invented the first automobile in 1885, you can't, just looking at the FUD that they had to overcome, why would you get rid of a horse? The horse has 4 legs, it's agile, it's mobile. And, the integrations that an automobile had to go through just to get up and running. And so, what I realized, and I've got some notes here on that, is that, when the car was invented in 1885, there were no light signals, there were no road rules, there were no paved roads. And so it had to operate on the previous technology, on these little horse-windy paths. And so there were a lot of, ebb and flows and back and forth, and a lot of haters out there in the space.
Oh, did you ever follow the Pessimist Archive?
No, what's that?
That's on Twitter. You should follow the Pessimist Archive. It pulls up articles of like old things, and one of them, that I've seen before, is it's like a news article talking about how like the car is a bad thing, and horses are, horses are the way of the future, and they're more dependable, and but it could be like with anything.
What is it? Like, the Pessimist Archive?
Yeah.
Okay.
He pulls up headlines all the time of,
that's funny. One of my favorites is, I'm sure you've seen this then, is the New York Times article from I think it was 1903, about, it's going to take man a million years to 10 million years to fly. It's going to be we're going to need ample mathematicians and engineers. And then 2 months later, the Wright brothers are flying in North Carolina.
Yep.
So it's like, golly, just how bad it can be.
How bad. And then you see that Senate hearing yesterday, or Congress, or whatever it was, and and just seeing how bad they're whiffing on it. Where like, if people don't get it, you're like, oh man, you were like the guy who was it? I know he's against Bitcoin too, and he said that the internet will go the way of the fax machine.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think that guy won a Nobel Peace Prize. I remember seeing that FUD around there. Here, I got some. I just pulled up, and this. What's interesting about this, Corey, is when I read this, I remember seeing some of this information, and then it just I blew off Bitcoin right in 2017, 2018. because I've been on Twitter since 2009, so I know I saw this information somehow, and it just made me think, whatever with Bitcoin.
It makes it easy to brush aside.
It makes it easy to brush it off. But I got an article here, September 2017, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin is a fraud that will eventually blow up. Well, in February 2021, JP Morgan says investors could make Bitcoin 1% of portfolios.
Yeah.
Right. Here's one from Goldman Sachs. May 2020, Goldman Sachs lists 5 reasons why Bitcoin is not an asset class nor suitable investment. 1 year later, not even 10 months, March 2021, Goldman Sachs to become the second big bank offering Bitcoin to wealthy clients. Here's what this reminds me of. I remember growing up, and my parents would say something like, trying to teach life lessons to kids, to my brother and I, and it's like, okay, people will say things, but you have to watch their actions, because words, people will say whatever they want, but if you watch their actions, that's going to tell you what they truly think.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's an elementary school lesson, Corey, right? That we all learn, like, words are important, but actions speak louder,
Mm-hmm.
as you're trying to figure out life. It's like, okay, how I act matters. And that's just a perfect example of, these major financial institutions.
They're dispelling all that FUD, but then when you watch what they're doing,
right.
and it makes you wonder, all the people in Congress, how much Bitcoin do they own?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does. What I found interesting is, the more I read in this space, and I'm kind of on some Alex Gladstein stuff right now, is the humanitarian opportunity that is available, and how corrupt the fiat system is.
Oh yeah.
In the sense of not getting, if I wanted to send, if I wanted to send $1,000 to, I don't know, a nonprofit in Nigeria, how much of that 1,000 is going to get there?
Yeah.
Like, and who does that 500 go through? Right. And why?
Mm-hmm.
Now we have a peer-to-peer system that I can get, $999.85 to where I want it to go. I mean, you want to talk about empowerment.
Yep.
Right. In sports, that's what we talk about all the time, right? Owning your position. Again, your effort matters, right? Coming together collectively as a team for one common goal, one dream, what we're looking to accomplish. I mean, you want to talk about helping people. We now have, through, Bitcoin as layer 1, and then when you get into the Lightning Network as layer 2 and Strike, to be able to cut out the middleman and get the funding to where you want to go for causes and people that are near and dear to your heart. That's incredible. I think what's mind-blowing, Corey, is these entities and these governments, these authoritarian regimes that position themselves as helping people.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
They're funneling the money.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're always doing that. I mean, that's why I think they are so, this is their Bitcoin is the chance to get out from underneath their boot. And there's nothing that they can do to stop it. The governments, they have their foot on the throat of the people,
right?
And it's slipping away,
right?
Which is why I think it's so cool, with El Salvador, and other countries are going to jump on it. I've been saying for a while before El Salvador that whoever the country is that wants to become a superpower, all you really have to do is adopt Bitcoin.
Right.
Like you'll move up a tier as far as like where you run if you're third world, you'll jump up to second world, or whatever. And if you're a second world, you'll jump up to first. I it's like with China banning mining, it's like, oh, that's great. That's great. Right. Like that's good. It's good news.
Right. Right. That's going to dispel, the negative connotation that they have majority
so
of the
much China,
well,
so much
what? Here we
power.
go. Now it's getting more spread out, and so
if China's against it, that's generally a good thing,
right?
Yeah.
right.
They don't
exactly.
They just permitted people to have 2 children, I think. So it's like
just crazy.
and then you have Elon sucking up to the teat of his government overlords. Like, did you see him talking about like, oh, China is so prosperous, blah blah blah? It's like,
Yeah, that's a
oh
horrible
boy,
perspective, and he's he's an interesting guy. He's obviously very smart guy. Has had ample success. But here's what I love about Bitcoin: it doesn't care.
no,
Whether you're a billionaire or you got $100 to your name. Tick tock, here comes the next block. So
yep,
that's beautiful. To have something that's truly decentralized, that
nobody
even
can
billionaires
control
can control that. And what's so mind-boggling, Corey, is that the world has never seen anything like that ever.
Yeah,
And so I think there's this just like shock or there's this confusion, these mind bombs that people can't wrap their brain around of like, well, okay, just wait till Wall Street gets involved. What that doesn't matter. Great. They can come on board or they don't have to. It's inevitable anyway. Or, well, just wait till, this this section of billionaires comes in and they really put their foot down. Great.
doesn't
Whatever.
matter.
Doesn't matter. And I don't think, I don't think people can wrap their brain around that it does not matter in a true decentralized protocol. It doesn't matter.
Well, I like what you said, where it's like it's literally the first time that something that can't be controlled by anybody exists.
Yeah.
As far as how it, plays towards you personally, because you could think like, okay, well, you can't control oxygen, like oxygen exists, but
right.
As far as how it relates to you, like somebody could cut your oxygen off, like,
right.
So it's like, but they could suffocate you, they could do anything, but they can't confiscate your Bitcoin.
Right.
And I talk about it all the time and I laugh, I don't condone the criminal, but this guy in Germany, and they had like $60 million worth of Bitcoin. And they were like, we have your Bitcoin. And he was like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
They're like,
exactly.
yeah, we took your wallet. And he's like, you can't get into it. And when I get out, I'll just recover it on a different, And it's like, like as terrible as it is, the guy, who knows what he did to get in jail. But yeah, like you can't just take stuff from people.
Yeah. Well, think about Corey, again, wherever people side, and we have different personalities, different perspectives, but it literally is giving the power back to the people to make their own decisions, where now governments have to be acting right. And, I think Ross Stevens said it this way: we've got a financial protocol that is run by rules and not rulers. And that just kind of hit me different because, with our central bank and the Fed being created and just the wastefulness that they've done in the 100+ years they've been, in existence. Wow. We're all governed by the same rules. We've never seen that. And I think what's interesting with all the FUD that continues to come out is that these men and women in leadership positions who for years have been championing equality, financial equality or whatever.
For votes.
We now have a system that actually gives the power to the people. And
we don't need people, as Surfer Jim says, we don't need some people and, to write some words on a piece of paper.
Right.
It just happens on its own.
And so now the market can truly correct itself honestly. And so, I've become a big fan of Ross Stevens. I read a lot of his work, and I am in alignment with what he said in his last interview, where he said, we haven't seen anything yet from potential taxation, government involvement somehow in a negative light. Again, that's not going to do anything to the Bitcoin network overall, but I think what we have to get people to wrap their brains around is that, the current legacy system isn't just going to roll over. They are going to kick, scream, and do everything that they possibly can. So, as much I'm an optimist, but I think it's going to get nasty.
Oh, and I've been saying that. Yeah, this whole system that they had control over, it's like, did you think it was just going to happen easily, that they were just going to give up and be like, oh man, okay, that's it?
Yeah. So, to the listeners that, still have their Bitcoin on exchanges or are, maybe worried about the responsibility of owning their own keys, I think the more you dig into this space, you want this ownership. You need this responsibility so that when things go south, because they will, you own your key, you own your Bitcoin outright. And so I think, for people that are in this space that don't self-custody yet, I think there needs to be a little bit more of, light a little bit of a fire under your tail. Like, hey, let's pull this thing off the exchange.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I just did a Twitter Spaces the other night, and a lot of the conversation was around self-custody. And I agree. I mean, I actually was telling them in the space, I'm planning on going down and like being like physically present with Guy Swan as he walks me through how to do it, because I'm so nervous about like sending the amount of money that I want to send through onto, because you have to send it. Yeah. And then if you screw it up, there's nothing you can do about it. But that's, personal responsibility. And, a lot of people said they were like, do a test, throw $10 through. And then once you see that it lands in your wallet, then you can, do more and slowly work your way up. But I'm just like, then I thought, because I'm a filmmaker, so I'm like, oh, this could be an interesting documentary. So the guy was like, all right, yeah, come on, like, let's do this. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's all about the self-custody, because then, if they ever try to come after you, you could say, well, I lost them in a boating accident,
that's the play.
Or the fact that it can teleport, across borders with you. And it's interesting. Because I mean, obviously you have an American flag on your shirt. I'm a proud American. But like with Alex Gladstein, when I had him on, he said something like, like, we're fans of America as it was originally founded, and then like Guy Swan even said to me, because I've been conflicted with, like, I was like, so much what's happening in America is anti-American, as far as the idea of freedom and self-sovereignty and everybody is created equal. And we're seeing the opposite of that. Yeah. And so it's like America, the idea is something that got let out of, the can and ever since 1776, because there was never really freedom before that. And all the world powers have been trying to put it back in the box. So, I hope that the United States remains that place for freedom, but it's like, you have to look at, like, okay, I mean, probably not in my lifetime, but, is South America, Central America going to become like the new world where it's all for prosperity and freedom and that's how they attract people and get people to move there. And how do you transfer your Bitcoin? You can do it through your head.
Right. I'm in an interesting spot as a United States Olympian, because I am so passionate for this country, to wear the red, white, and blue and represent the United States in the Olympics. I mean, it was an absolute honor. And I love this place. Do we have issues? Yeah.
It's like when I say that, I'm like, I don't want to ever leave. I love this. I will fight for this place.
I'll fight for it. I love it. There's no doubt there are issues that we all need to work through. So totally on board with that. But what our government is doing to debase the U.S. dollar, and I say this as a proud American, is horrible. And it is, and Corey, it is the opposite of what it means to be an American.
Yeah.
Right. And when you are robbing and stealing through inflation and quantitative easing. And so
doing it deceitfully
and doing it like, well, things always just go up, I mean, we just gotta make more, you gotta spend more. That's the economy. That's the Keynesian economics. Like, hold on, can we do this differently? And so,
I mean, you think about, like, if you look back, I forget who it was, but somebody, they predicted that it was in the 1930s, and they predicted that by like our generation, um, they'd be working like 15 hours a week because technology will advance. You won't
Right.
need, and it's just kind of like sad to see that they've basically with the starting at Bretton Woods, but then going off the gold standard,
Yeah.
how they've just basically created a hamster wheel
Right.
for the population to run and run and run. And my parents are nearing retirement, and I was just having the conversation with them last night, and it was like, man, like they would have been so much easier for them to retire and even earlier if the inflation wasn't
Yeah. If we
out
had
of
sound
control.
money. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you might have already seen this, but to the listeners, there's a podcast with Jeff Booth. So he wrote a book called The Price of Tomorrow.
Yeah,
But then
love that book.
he did a like a 7-part series with Robert Breedlove on talking.
Who has since destroyed his
Come
credibility, but
on,
that's
right
another
now, like
subject.
Robert, come on, man, come
He was
home,
so
come
good. He was
home.
so good.
I
We'll always
know.
welcome you back.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, but yeah,
Booth
great
was spot
series.
on. It was a great series. Booth was spot on technology should be deflationary, and just the sound the when you have sound money, you can do it. And so I think what's interesting about this space and the power of Bitcoin as the soundest money, because money is a technology, of the ancillary benefits of what we can do once we have money that can't be debased, that can't be inflated, that can't be, confiscated, is, we can get back to rewarding the, I don't know, movers and shakers of the world, the people that are truly adding value and not just rent seekers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you improve a civilization, is you reward and you incentivize the right things. You just don't, somebody closest to the money printer is getting all. I mean, it's just it's so backwards.
I know. It's in. I had Jeff on my third episode, and it was perfect timing because I got his book for Christmas, just finished reading it, and he was like, "Yeah, come on." I'm like, "Oh my God, this is perfect." And when we were talking, we went down that rabbit hole of like, like you said, not looking for rent seekers, like providing value, and like he was like, really, the only way whenever you have sound money to gain money is by providing value to other people.
Yeah.
And like I don't know if you've listened to Preston Pish, but he said before, and I had been thinking this way, and it just kind of was like, yeah, this makes sense. Once Bitcoin becomes the standard, what do you do? People were like, oh, it's just once it stops appreciating, what do you do? And it's like, well, then you turn around and you buy things, companies that are going to have free cash flows, like, and that provide value. And the only way they're going to have free cash flows is if they provide value to other people.
Exactly.
And then you kind of get into like how it'll help peace around the world. Because Jeff Booth said, he was like, in order to have war, like he's like, if I have an army, that means I have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
That means I lose my Bitcoin, and having that army doesn't gain me Bitcoin. Sure, there's things with like secure, personal security or whatever, but like you can't go out and with an army and confiscate somebody else's Bitcoin,
right? Like you could with gold back in the day, and that's
exactly
what they did.
Yeah. So you're not going to have these situations anymore where and then I'm sure if you mentioned Gladstein, I'm sure you read the petrodollar and all that kind of stuff, and that just blew my mind. And that's kind of one of those things where it shakes you to the core of what it means to be an American,
right?
But then also, whenever you get shook, I think part of being an American is getting shook to your core of what it means to be American, because in other countries, they don't have the freedom to question their leaders.
Right.
And that's something that's beautiful about this country, is that, you can openly question things.
Mm-hmm.
And well, until Twitter stops censoring.
Until you get censored, right?
Yeah.
But that's a big problem, and what I've noticed is, so I've been in this space for 2021. I've consumed a ton of content because it just
sounds like
so
you're
intriguing.
like on the warp speed.
And I've noticed is that the deeper that I go, the more excited I get about, I'm here for the technology. I guess with 2021, you can say that, right? Because I didn't have a bag from back in the day. So I truly am here for the technology and the future, with the way if we just take the price out of it, because of the power it can get it can give to the people. The idea that you can transfer wealth with a seed phrase, that I can cross a border and take my wealth with me with not having, bars of gold, all this
Don't tell Peter
Fiat.
Schiff,
Yeah,
he'll be at
like
whenever we're all trying to transfer or go across borders. He's sitting there at the airport getting all his gold checks.
Go. Yeah. So, it's mind-blowing technology. And the only thing I can think about, because it's so mind-blowing that it's so disruptive that we haven't seen anything like it before, that it's tough to put into words. But the only thing I can think compared to would be like, the creation of the internet.
Yep. That's what Guy Swan said to me, and I don't know if somebody told him this or this was his thought, but this is what really, really changed my perspective too, was he said that it's the base layer. It's the protocol layer.
Yeah.
Kind of like how TCP IP is the base layer of the internet.
Yeah.
And then emails on top of that, and all those other things.
Yeah.
Everything got built on top of that. So it's
right.
like, once you realize that, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, having one Bitcoin eventually will be mind blowing.
Right. Right.
Probably for like our kids' generation, like once they get to our age, people will be like, oh my God, your family has a Bitcoin. Like, that's
Bitcoin.
insane.
Right. Agreed.
Because you're basically at that point competing against, like, you're supplying to me, I mean, this is a really uneducated view, but in caveman terms, you're supplying the finances. You are the central bank that provides the money that all the banks will operate with.
Right.
So like, whenever you have, in the States, you have PNC Bank, you have, Chase Bank, all these banks, and they need money because they'll, I'm sure, adapt and try to exist in some way as far as currency, movers and a place for you to store your money,
right,
and transact. So they'll be turning to people that actually own Bitcoin and being like, hey, can you put that up on our Lightning wallet so that you can earn whatever percent, and it'll be a multi-sig, so they can't access it. It'll just be
exactly.
It'll be something that you provide to them. So if you're a Bitcoiner, you'll be providing banks and financial institutions service, the ability to use your Bitcoin. And so it's just kind of funny where all these ones that are in power now are going to eventually be turning to you, being like, hey, do you have any of that? Like, you're the old Dave Chappelle, like,
Dave Chappelle,
yeah. And so I think that's just fascinating. And I saw this stat. It said something like, if you own 0.21 Bitcoin, like 98% of the world won't be able, the rest of the 98% of the world, like, won't be able to accept. You'll be in the top 2 percentile of Bitcoin owners.
Yeah. Incredible.
It
reminds me of like, land. Land is finite here, right, on Earth.
You can't create more.
Can't create more. There's 57 million square miles of land. 33% of it is desert, so we can't live there. 24% of it is mountain peak, where it wouldn't be reasonable to live, and so it leaves about 24 million square miles of land. And so anybody in real estate, any realtor, lender, whatever, always talks about pick up some land. They're not making any more of it, or this is finite, right? And again, depending on where the land's located, there's different types of value. But just using that analogy, Corey, okay, if we're going to value land as a finite resource, which it is, why wouldn't we take those same properties to Bitcoin? Because it has it, right? No more than 21 million
stuck to the ground.
And right. So and
you said, there's 24 million square miles.
24 million square miles of livable land in the world.
Land.
Yeah. So 57 square miles total, but
Bitcoin.
Yeah, so very comparable and that. But if you own land in Manhattan versus land in, I don't know, Topeka, Kansas, there's a little bit different of a price adjustment. Bitcoin doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter. Get some of the pie.
There's not one piece of Bitcoin that's more attractive than another.
Right. The one that was the Bitcoin mine from the Genesis block in 2009 is not more than the one that's going to get mined here in the next 20 minutes. Well, I guess it's 10 now that the little difficult adjustment.
Did it happen while we've been
I
talking?
think it's coming today. I don't know if it's happened yet.
It's gonna be interesting to see how far that drops. But it's a beautiful thing, where it just it doesn't. I tweeted this last night and said, I was like, the most amazing part about Bitcoin is that all of us, basically my whole thought was, all of us are on here talking, everyone's tweeting about it, everyone's talking about it, there's media constantly, all these things are happening, and Bitcoin doesn't care. Like, it just keeps going. It's like no matter what anyone's saying. So it's funny that we all have this commentary, and it's great to educate people. But it's just like there's a Bitcoin almost is kind of like, man, you guys bicker a lot. Like I'm just gonna churn out another block and
right
and then keep securing this and getting stronger. And I mean, I don't know how you couldn't be bullish on that.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how you can't be, if you truly. And I like to come to things like from a position of a skeptic, and so I want to ask clarifying questions. And so if you start to truly understand this work, again, not coming from a finance background, not coming from a computer science background, but just understanding what is money, looking at the landscape of the U.S. dollar and what the government's been doing for years. Mm-hmm. I have a tough time how somebody could not be long Bitcoin. I guess I can understand if they wanted to be short, with the ups and downs, if they wanted to trade it or whatever, that's their fancy, whatever. But I don't know if you've truly done research in this space and understand how to identify what's FUD and what's not, how you can't be long Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm curious what with you being, class of 2021.
Yeah, class of 2021. I like
that. What's your view on like Ethereum? And I'll let you give your view first and how you've gone through it, and then I can share my views. You could probably guess mine, but
So like
I owned it. I owned it until March, I think.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, it pegged itself as, if Bitcoin's digital gold, it's digital silver, or, if Bitcoin's gold, Ethereum's oil. Here's what's interesting, Corey, is, again, the more I read in this space, nothing that Ethereum can do or says it can do or will do, Bitcoin can't do in the future, or can't do now if they wanted to.
It's amazing. I love how seeing a lot of us that are newer to the space see that so clearly. Like, like I've said, and I can't get past, like, Ethereum isn't hard capped. So like, we don't know the total supply. It can be manipulated. It can be centrally controlled. And it's not as secure. So beyond that, like, it's like, well, why would I want that? And then every cool idea, like you said, Bitcoin can do all of it. It's the second layer, like, Roger Ver, if you've dug down and seen him, the old Bitcoin Jesus that made Bitcoin Cash and did the hard fork,
because they wanted bigger blocks, didn't they? I remember when they were block war, they
wanted to be able to make transactions happen quicker and everything. And it's like, it's just so funny that, like, he was like, we have to change the fundamentals of Bitcoin in order to have transactions happen faster.
And now
the Lightning Network is here.
And
the
we need to keep layer one. We need to keep layer one. That's it. Layer one. That's it. If you've got a brilliant idea, and then maybe you do, layer two and so on, bring it. But if we get layer one right, and keep layer one right, not a problem.
I heard like on a Twitter space that it was a debate between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And this guy, to his credit, he was the only Ethereum person up there, and so to his credit, he was fighting for it. But there's really no rebuttal for, like, when they're like, you were worried about big blocks, but, like, now we have Lightning Network, so what's
Right.
wrong with that, and they come
Right.
up with like their couple of talking points, but none of it really
Right.
lands. So it's just kind of interesting to me, of like kind of taking like shortcuts, thinking like
Yeah.
from a sports perspective. So
Yeah.
like, you can take shortcuts and maybe have short-term gain, but is it gonna
Right.
benefit you in the long run?
Right.
Um, is there, or well, thinking of I was thinking of Cool Runnings. He's
Oh
putting
yeah.
the when
Yeah.
he put the
Wait
weights in
till
the front of the
and
bobsled,
the yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like, no, you didn't win. Like it might have temporarily gave you some happiness,
Right. Some
and
advantage,
then
but yeah.
but eventually the bottom falls out, and so that's why I say I think Ethereum trends towards zero,
Yeah.
where Bitcoin trends towards infinity.
Right.
It's just going to keep going
Oh,
and
and
going.
then Kathy Wood and ARK, they filed for their ETF. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
She's a brilliant investor, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. And so to see them come in the space, and what
I
they're
saw
trying to
George
do.
Soros. I mean, not that I'm a fan of George
Yeah,
Soros, but I don't
I
know.
know.
But it's like, but
I know.
but
It's for
everybody,
everybody. It's
yeah,
for everybody. See, that's the thing. Like, it's for everybody. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who hates America.
yeah.
Um,
But you can't. You can The American idea is you can't let them. You can't bar them from it.
right. And so, Corey, that's a perfect example of it. It is for everybody, and he can't come in here and change the rules, and he can't come in here and pay for, how he wants to stack the deck and what he's done in the past.
But it's kind of funny too that think seeing Elon, like I think all these really quote unquote smart people, they get in and they go like, I can manipulate this.
Mm,
And if you've noted, like I noticed that Elon's tweets were having a diminishing effect on the price of Bitcoin, and he slowly stopped tweeting about it
yeah.
because his ego can't handle the fact that he can't manipulate it. you know
Right. Right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have an ego like those people, but I'm also not in their position where you could have a millions and millions of people sucking up to you and telling you you're great and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So it's very easy for them to fall down that. But I just think it's fascinating how I think these people, they jump in, they're like, I can control it, and then once they realize they can't control it, so maybe that's what Soros would do.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, I can come in and short it, and all he realizes maybe he had a temporary effect, but that's it.
Right. Well, Elon's Twitter has just been crazy, right? Up, down, up, down. Yeah, I read his biography earlier this year. Look, he's a smart guy. Obviously, have had a lot of success. I think he sees what's coming. He threw out this FUD about the mining and all of that, but they're not going to sell any of their Bitcoin. That they'll get back to accepting it or whatever once the mining gets on more renewables. So what's so interesting is, has anybody looked at these lithium mines that are powering? Have we looked at that?
Carving up the earth, and,
So do we want to have a conversation around that? If
yeah.
So again, they pick and choose these vacuum scenarios. What's interesting is, as you do more research and you look at things when you zoom out, right, and look at the scope of things, like, it doesn't matter, Elon. Man, I hope you keep your 1.5 billion in Tesla. Who knows? Maybe you sold in Q2. Whatever.
Yeah. Go buy your dog.
Doesn't
coin.
matter. Yeah, whatever, man.
Go buy your dog coin and deal with it. So I got to ask you about the transition. Like you said, you had your agent and
Yeah.
everything, but athletically, that's a crazy transition to go from,
Yeah.
because it's not like you were a lineman or anything.
Right.
You were a wide receiver, right?
Yeah, receiver. Yeah.
And to make that transition to, and it's funny because a lot of people, we all loved Cool Running, so we watched them make the transition from the
the
track
heat,
and field.
track and field, yeah.
And this kind of makes sense as to why you are so agile with being able to shift your focus onto Bitcoin when it comes to finances, and kind of like you said with your talking and all the talks you give,
Yeah.
about being nimble. But how did that happen? I mean, did you start just training differently and realized, okay, this is an opportunity? And
Yeah.
who do you call up the bobsled team and just say, hey,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah. Good question. So, I kind of fit the mold because I had the track background and playing football had put muscle on me. So that because they look for guys who you got to have strength, but then you have to have
that sled's
speed.
heavy.
Sled's heavy, so you couldn't go to a gym and just go get the biggest meathead in the gym. He wouldn't be able to run with the sled. He might be strong, but and then the same thing with track and field. You couldn't just go get the fastest sprinter because yes, they might be able to sprint, but they don't have any strength to really move the sled. So you try to find that happy medium where you find guys, and we have a women's program who's incredible, but think about, you find people who have both strength and speed. So I kind of fit the mold. And so no, a lot of YouTube videos looking at different angles and how they train. But when I got to the Olympic Training Center, I started watching.
Did you get an invite there, or did you have to?
So I recorded some of my sprinting and some of my lifting, and I sent it to a driver.
Okay.
And the driver said, hey, why don't you come out here in a couple months, push a bobsled around, see if you like it. I said, all right, I'll come out. But if my agent finds a football team, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so true story, though, 1 month before I'm supposed to go, try my cool runnings, I get a phone call from this driver. He goes, Johnny, one of my guys has showed up overweight. Do you want to come up now and compete in the U.S. 4-man team trials? And so I'm like, well, when's the race? He goes, it's in 2 days. I said, 2 days, man.
You've never pushed a bobsled?
I've never pushed a bobsled in my life. I haven't been on ice like this. He goes, Johnny, all you have to do is get inside the sled. So true story, Corey. My first time ever on ice. I flew in the night before team trials. And we took third place. It was unbelievable. So it set in motion this journey of, becoming an Olympian. But yeah, the training, in football, you've got 3 hours to play a game. In bobsled, I was a push athlete. So I push the sled, I get in, and then you just hang on. That portion of my responsibility is only 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So you go from a 3-hour game to a 5-second responsibility. Everything in bobsled was heavy lifting and short sprinting. So we did a lot of squats, a lot of power cleans, and then we did a lot of sprinting. We did zero cardio. There's no cardio in bobsled. And so I remember, I'm about 3 months out from the Olympics. I'm in incredible shape. And my fiance she was my fiance at the time. We're walking up like 3 flights of stairs, and I get to the top, and I'm like, hey, hold on, I got to catch my breath because I don't have a cardio component, right? I haven't done cardio in 4 years. You don't need it. And so it's funny now because, she's my wife now, of course, but she gives me a hard time about that. She's like, you were in the best shape of your life right before the Olympics. So you couldn't even go up 3 flights of stairs without, having to like, hey, hold on, let me catch my breath. So
being like Seth Rogen in Superbad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just beer. It's just beer.
Yeah. So good deal.
So whenever you guys are in the bobsled, though, you have you have to turn your head right and know all the turns, or
no. Well, you need to know the turns, but there's no moving in a bobsled. So cool runnings, they cinematize that. Okay. Once you get in, Corey, it's you get out of the wind tunnel, right? Yes, you got to be lower, but than the guy in front of you, and then you brace yourself along the side, and there's no moving. Because if you move in that sled and you're in a high pressure curve, you could fishtail the back end of that sled, and that's how one of the ways crashes happen. So, you
so what if you have to sneeze in the middle of it?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think it's
that'd
so
be a good like Family Guy sequence.
Yeah,
of like
it's
Peter Joyd.
It's so it's such an adrenaline rush, and it's very violent in the sled. So
how fast are you going?
On average, about 80 miles an hour. The fastest track in the world is in Vancouver, Canada, actually in Whistler, Canada. We went 94.5 miles an hour there.
Whoa.
No seatbelts. So it's a crazy ride.
Like, it's the, roller coaster without any safety harness.
Yeah.
And so when you're in there, so you have to get out of the wind tunnel.
Yep.
Arms against the side.
Arms against the side.
Minimize your movement.
Yep. You got handlebars you're holding on to.
And then you're basically just literally holding as hard as you can.
Yeah, holding, just you're trying to stay stationary. You want to be low. I get motion sickness, so I like to ride with my eyes closed,
Oh,
so I don't, because what you see,
yeah, I would
when you're
say.
going that fast, you just see, it's like tunnel. You just see like it's flying right by, and that kind of messes my equilibrium up. So I just ride with my eyes closed.
I gotta do that. I gotta try this.
Yeah, you
I
should.
gotta.
They do. If you're ever in Lake Placid, New York, or Park City, Utah,
They
those are
both
the
have.
two. Those are the two tracks in North America.
I assume it has to be only wintertime. They can't run those in
No,
the
so they
summer.
have they do a bobsled on wheels in the summertime, so you can still take a sled and see what it feels like. You won't drive it; they have a professional driver,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you'll sit in it. And yeah, I've got friends that text me or tweet me all the time, like, "Hey, I'm doing the bobsled run." But yeah, it'd be a great if you're ever in
Well,
upstate New
I
York.
wanted to ever since I would like Cool Runnings, and I
Yeah,
became obsessed with that. And then I remember trying to build a bobsled
yeah, okay,
with wheels. Like I was taking apart old rollerblades, and
okay,
oh god, I was maybe like 11, and it just became a mess. But I had this like in my mind, the vision was so much better, and I was like, we
yeah.
can bobsled down the driveway, and into the backyard,
Too
and it
funny.
never happened. So then the driver, they
Yeah,
have to. So the other three, or if it's two man, just the other guy, but basically you're all this built the same. It
yep,
doesn't matter, like those three positions,
yep.
it doesn't really matter where you're sitting, right?
No, you have your assigned seat, but
You
our
just get
job,
used to.
our responsibility, the three guys in the back, our responsibility is to push that sled up to speed, get in, get out of the wind tunnel, no moving. The driver, so I guess you could consider us like offensive linemen. The
Mm-hmm,
driver's like the quarterback.
mm-hmm.
He doesn't have a steering wheel in the bobsled. He has D rings. So it's on a pulley system, and so he's literally using these D rings to pivot the blades of the sled. His eyes are just above the cowling, so he's trying to get as low as he can, and he's responsible for driving the sled and navigating it so we get down the hill fast and safe. And
And
yeah,
what happens if they, don't? Because I wonder. I mean, so I played hockey, so I know
yeah.
that you can turn the blades, but like if the blades are cut into the ice, you know, it's kind
Well,
of
they're
hard
not.
to.
So our blades they're more rounded, because that would
Okay.
damage the ice if they were like hockey blade.
I always
So
wondered that, like, if there was like, because it would be if it was like hockey skates, you'd be
oh yeah,
leaving just
no, you'd be
tracks.
living track. Yeah, it's all rounded. And we sand them before races, so everything's rounded. You wouldn't
Okay.
even you have to do a blade inspection before you even compete. And so if somebody even tried to bring something like that, you have dimensions that you have to work within, so it wouldn't even
So if
fly.
you ran your hand across a
Oh
bobsled
yeah, you
blade, it's
wouldn't
not
cut
going to
it.
cut you.
No, 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 no. It's rounded. It's probably you probably have like, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch of a round that's hitting the ice. So
Yeah.
it's yeah.
What's the so the and then once you get across the finish line, I mean, basically you got the guy in the back, Sanka, doing the
Yeah.
brakes.
Sanka pulls the brake. We got like a little claw that when we cross the finish line, he's pulling to slow the sled down. And then when you get out, you got to go weigh it. So there's a weight limit. So with four guys and the bobsled, you can't go over 1,300 pounds. So we try to run about 1297, 1298, because if the brake, when you come up the braking stitch, if you catch any snow in your sled, which everybody does,
Yeah.
and that weighs and that puts you over 1,300 pounds, you get disqualified. So
Okay.
you always run 2 to 3 pounds, a little light, to take into account the snow that you're going to pick up, but you weigh it to make sure that you're within the weight limit, and then you head back up to the track. You get 2 runs in a race, and
Okay.
it's the lowest time that wins. Combined time, lowest wins.
Oh, so they
Um,
combine both times. It's not
combine both times, and lowest total time wins the race.
the so then do they weigh it before you go down too?
We no, they weigh it. They weigh it after your first run.
Okay, so they don't weigh it after the second run,
No, they don't. Mm-mm.
and you have to carry the sled up.
We have trucks, these big trucks that we roll them onto.
How much do they
So
weigh?
pretty heavy, about 212 kilos. So whatever 212 is by 2.2, so
Wow.
400, almost 500 pounds. They're pretty heavy. So in cool runnings where all those guys that have the sled on their shoulder over their head, no, not a chance.
No,
That's
that
that's cinematized.
that's still such a good moment at the end. It's it's just such an emotional moment. The
Yeah,
dad, all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Um, Were you ever in a wreck like that, or?
Oh yeah. I've had 8 crashes in my career. They do not feel good. I'll send you one. Maybe you can put it in the show notes, and the listeners can watch a bobsled crash. It was our crash in Switzerland, St. Moritz, Switzerland. It got pretty nasty. Pulled one of the brakemen out of the back of the sled, so it was pretty dirty.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't feel too good. Well, hey, Johnny, I really appreciate you coming on. I'll let you get running here. I know you got a busy day, but where can people find you? And let's definitely do this again.
Yeah,
because
for
it's
sure.
fun seeing the Bitcoin journey.
Yeah.
Unfold. So yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on all social media platforms. My handle is at Johnny Quinn USA. That also happens to be my website, johnnyquinnusa.com. And love being part of the Bitcoin community. I'm excited for the future here and super long Bitcoin. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny.